All right, here we are. Welcome to Mod City Live. This is Voltage Control Lab. Thanks everybody for coming in here and joining us and spending a little bit of time with us. We're going to be answering some questions that we got online. Crazy week this week, as you all know. This was a short week in America, apparently. We got a space launch going on at the same time. Hope everybody's checking that out. Keep that on in the background. And maybe we'll get some sound going. Just getting a little bit of something going on back there. So, if you guys have any questions, subjects to discuss, I do not have a Pamela's new workout, but a very common and popular module, multifunctional module for clocking and sequencing and modulation. I believe it does all kinds of modulation as well. We could take a look at Pamela's new workout. Bring it up here. Do a little bit of module analysis here. Of course, let's bring this up on the Busy Circuits website. Uh-oh, what happened? Here we go. Okay, let's take a look at this thing. If it will, there we go. And we got a space launch going on in the corner. Okay, let's take a look at this. Pamela's new workout. Big one, very popular module. I think if we looked at modular grid, then we're going to see that Pamela's new workout is, I think, in the top modules. There it is, number 6, right? 24,000 racks. Now, that doesn't mean that it's necessarily in 24,000 physical racks, but it means that people are at least dreaming about Pamela's new workout enough to put it in that many racks. It's number 3 in the top modules in terms of ratings. 2 below maths, higher than multiple mutable and make noise modules in here. I don't know why maths is on here twice. That's funny. That's probably cutting down its actual score, right? Or maybe its actual score should be slightly lower as a result. Yeah, well, I'm not a statistician. Okay, so big module is my point. Inputs include clock, start-stop, I believe this will do, and CV modulation, positive and bipolar, unidirectional and bipolar. Control screen, it looks kind of tiny, right? Imagine these are 1/8" cables, so tiny little display, but maybe this is just showing things like BPM. Maybe that's too annoying to have in the background. Let me know in the comments. Okay, we have a push and turn encoder, a knob for programming, and a start-stop button for manual start-stop, and 8 outputs. And I think we're going to see that this can do, of course, clocks. It's a compact programmable clocked modulation source. So it's specialized towards clocks, gate sequencing, things like this. Um, Provides 8 highly editable outputs producing various control voltage signals correlated and synced to a BPM master clock. So all of these 8 outputs are going to be controlled by the same clock. We'll get divisions, as it says over here, clock divisors and multipliers from 512 to divided by 512 to times 48. Um, 8 clocked voltage outputs with independent adjustable clock. A BPM, locked clock, which is a nice thing to have from a clock. Not all clock modules have that. Of course, we could just use a LFO or an oscillator as a clock module, but 10 to 300 BPM, that's pretty good. I love to see faster BPM, but it might start to get difficult to even find modules that will respond past that for clock. But I don't know, might be a fun thing. Gated triangle sine envelope and random base waveforms. So I suppose those are for LFOs. We might be able to get audio rate out of that. I haven't messed with it too much. Waveform level and pulse width skewing, phase delay and delay division. Interesting. For complex swing. That's always nice. Swing in a clock module is very useful, and especially if we're making something that's not just very rigid, electro or something like that, techno, maybe. Swing is important and sometimes elusive. So gate delay, I use the Malenko gate delay, but this seems like something that you can just program into the app or into the module, into the channel, and it'll be ready to go, locked to that. Euclidean and random step skipping with beat-based looping. Basic quantization of output levels to various musical scales. So I suppose that means it can scale or sample and hold maybe some of these waveforms and fit them into scales. And it is letting us know you have to have a certain firmware update for that. And all output parameters assignable to 2 CV inputs, so we can do some external modulation, sequencing, attenuation, offset monitoring, as it says, per output, and group saving and loading to 200 banks, so we can have like tons of tracks all programmed into different banks or slots, saved, and switch tempos and clock division settings, Euclidean pattern divisions, all these things could be set up pre-show, and then we can call them up via these banks, either individual outputs, it looks like, or the entire group of 8, or maybe even smaller groups within that 8. Voltage and direct control of clock start, stop, reset, and rate. So all of that stuff, all of our clock controls, basically CV or square wave controllable, on-off controllable. Sync to an external clock input. Real-time intuitive user interface. Easy firmware updates via USB port. That's probably on the back, so we need to have a... there's the USB port right there. So we need to have access to the back to get into that. That's okay. I wonder if we could just keep it connected. Probably not smart. You can see why this is so popular, right? You can save your entire set it up, save it, forget about it, just come back to it, play it based on group settings. Connect it, keep certain things connected and ready to go, and synced up throughout your whole system with one device. Kind of a no-brainer. How much does Pam's work out? Let's look. $275. Yeah, that seems reasonable for you know, such a versatile module. If you don't need it for clocks, it can do LFOs and rhythmic waveforms. It says many parameters controllable uh, via external CV control. So you might even be able to use this as an oscillator. Anyone want to let us know if this works as an oscillator? Okay. Hey, let's catch up with the chat room. KD, what's up? End of cycle. Good to see you. Cameron, is that your name? Cameron? It looks right. Cameron uses Pamela's all the time. Haven't really used the features on the new firmware. Yeah, that's the other nice thing about this. A module like this is a gift that keeps on giving because uh, Busy Circuits keeps updating the firmware. Doesn't do a function that you would like? Send them an email. They might build it in, right? This is the benefit of our little niche scene here. HR got it shipped for $205. Hey, that's a bargain. Does wave folding too. And end of cycle mentions anything can be an oscillator, certainly. And if we can send it up to 300 beats per minute, we might be able to actually hear a very low tone out of that thing. But that's whether it's a traditionally applicable oscillator is another question. But as we saw with maths, we can get a lot of fun stuff out of a not so traditional oscillator. Okay, now we had a couple of questions in the YouTube post. Let's go over there for a second. And if you guys have some discussion topics, shout them out over there. Okay, so Man Oh Man, I think, is who it was, asked this question. Man Oh Man, M4N, 0M4N. That seems like it's supposed to say Man Oh Man. He says, cover arrangement of modules in the rack. I know it's a very opinionated idea, but so is literally everything in modular. Yes, agreed. And I'd love to get some input from the room here. If you guys have thoughts on module arrangement, on how you orient modules inside of the rack, I think you're going to find I kind of ended up going a little bit utilitarian with mine because I've got upside down modules. I've got things that maybe on the surface don't make a lot of sense until I have to sit down and explain them or think about them. We're working with what we have in some cases, but I think arrangement of our tools and our, let's say, our modules in the voice might take on a couple of different thought processes. I was thinking about this after reading your question, and I think I always think about this kind of the same way that Moog has laid out their synthesizers, where we have kind of our signal generators on the left side of the synthesizer, and the signal flow goes from left to right. Now, I don't know if that's just how I learned it in school or if the Moog is that influential just kind of subconsciously, or if it goes back to reading and those types of things. I don't know why, but I tend to follow that same path, kind of the left to right flow. And I think this is something that should be tweaked depending on how your setup works. You have to think first and foremost about how your hands are going to move around the instrument, because we need to be able to touch the instrument without worrying about breaking something, right? I especially think about this when I'm getting into performance. because once we start performing, we start doing all kinds of dumb stuff, and we start not thinking about things and moving around in unexpected motions and slapping things, and our hands become twice as heavy because we're not paying attention to them, and we're stressed out, and we might have to do very specific and timed things, and we've got a lot of extra pressure when we're in a live situation. So where your hands are going to go is really important, and where you don't want them to go is somewhere where they might accidentally hit something that will either destroy your performance or damage your case. That's kind of that's my biggest concern. I can save the performance. There's some enjoyment in the musical, let's say, tightrope walking. There's not so much enjoyment in the gear endangering part, right? And so I'm worried about, am I going to accidentally move my hand? Someone taps me on the shoulder or something to hand me a beer, and I turn, and my hand going to hit the power supply and break the power plug off the power supply module? Is my hand going to move to adjust reverb and accidentally hit the output cable, which could be big and bulky compared to my other module cables, and hit that and knock it out, or cause some sort of signal loss, or finicky channel? How it is when you jiggle a cable in a port. Sometimes it goes weird down the line. And I can't say I've really worked some of this stuff out. One way to avoid some of those things is to use a case with power that isn't on the modular face. But this isn't that case. I have a 4MS row power module over on the far left side, over there, way up here, and I've kind of put the power supply up at the very top so that I don't really need to put my hand up there at all. And I've got a right angle plug. This is like a laptop power supply, basically. It's a right angle cable so that I don't have some big bulky cable sticking out of the modular case. And if I do put my hand up there to turn the pulsar, gate sequence or something like that, then I'm not going to it's a lot less likely that I'm actually going to hit something that's, kind of, what's the right word I'm looking for? Projecting out from the modular face. Excuse me. I also have like a little piece of tape down here because I accidentally dropped a cable into this daisy chain power supply input output. This is for daisy chaining row powers. Like if you've got multiple rows that are powered by row powers, they've got this extra port here, but there's no cap that I know of that can just go inside of that and cover it up. Maybe there is. If you guys know about anything like that, let me know. But this is wall power basically, and I accidentally went to put something into the output patch port here, and it went in here, or it was just dangling or something, and bloop, went in, and not cool. Yes, EOC. This is my anvil case. This is a case that I built using an old stick case. Might still put a 1U row up in the top up here. I just got the lid off of this thing. It had a piano hinge going across the back with the lid, and I finally got that piano hinge off. It was riveted on, so got that off. Just got some removable lid hinges, so I'm gonna be souping this up maybe in my next school break. But yeah, what else? Also, this isn't completely uniform, but most of the modules on the top row have their ports at the bottom. And I don't know if this is an intentional thing, but um, all of the modules up there are clock generators, signal generators or oscillators, basically, and kind of the signal path for the voice. Clock, oscillators, and tone generators, filter, effects, mixer, VCA, mute, mixer. So along the bottom is all modulation. So left to right, we have our clock, oscillators, filter and effects, and then mixing controls. And I'd love to have a better mixer, but the mixer control that I have right now is kind of hacked together. It's a quad VCA, and then each of those channels are going out to a mute module so that I can have muting and I can have uh, level control inside of the case. I would prefer very much a performance mixer or something like that, but that's not in the case yet. So we'll see. I'm also kind of torn between using an external mixer because, um, mixers are something that, again, you want to be able to kind of slap them around a little bit. You want to be able to move those things and be a little bit more uh, swift with your action and not have to worry about accidentally nudging a cable a little too hard that's in the way. And that's, again, that's one of my biggest concerns when I'm doing live performance. Not because I'm like, flailing around and swinging and stuff, but you never know. I'm more concerned about just like unexpected physical actions that I couldn't even catch or predict that my body just does because, you know, I'm freaked out and under pressure. So that's more my concern. And a mixer is the type of thing that hitting mute buttons, faders, EQs, stuff like that. That it's nice to have all of that stuff contained in one device that doesn't have to take up a lot of space. That's stuff that even if you have small hands, it's nice to be able to activate and uh, uh, perform with something that is a little bit more sizable. Um, so that's kind of how I think about arrangement. I even turned it upside down, the ornament and crime, as you've probably seen already, um, which gets a little confusing with the ports. They're just reversed. This is CV1 instead of, as it says, CV4. This is trigger 1. This is trigger 4. So it goes that way. D is A, C is B, kind of does this slightly different arrangement. But it's great for filming videos because I can get the camera right down here into the screen, and uh, and it keeps this kind of thing where all the modules have ports at the top. There's only a few exceptions down here, like the Basimilus and the gate delay, the mult. These are things that I could drop out to, but getting there. End of cycle says, gigging at the club, he's always concerned about the power blowing my gear out. I gigged at Los Globos and it blew my Voyager light panel out. Oh man, that's a bummer. I think, yeah, you. I mean, I can't speak to the extreme nature of stage electronics, stage power, let's say, because um, I'm kind of like you. Oh, look, the rocket's in the sky. Look at that. It made it. Okay, yeah, I'm in LA. Los Globos is kind of a wonky club, so kind of maybe depends even what room you're in there. But um, hmm, blew out your light panel. That's crazy. I wonder if like a really good surge protector in between would make any difference. I mean, it would probably blow out the surge protector, I would guess, but maybe better that than the synthesizer. And if maybe again, somebody. This is something we should ask Paul from Synth Technology, um, just to see, somebody who's really knows the power supplies. Um, End of cycle says he had a power supply. He had a surge protector. That's a bummer. Let's see. Wayne asks, he's told that there's clicking with the quad envelope. There is, that comes from super short envelope shapes, and I think they have a firmware update coming for that. Maybe that's not for public consumption, but I don't know when or if that's coming. But this, clicking is a common issue with envelopes, and it's something that we sometimes just have to deal with and accommodate by slightly increasing our attack times. But um, yeah, there are some, especially digital envelopes tend to have that issue, I find. But what else? Let's see. Yeah, the quad envelope, quad LFO, that stuff I could take out. I'm gonna actually start refining this kit for more, um, uh, let's say, versatile performance, because I want to be able to get the ES8 in there and send signal back and forth from Ableton, send you know parts of the voice back and forth from Ableton, have some repeatable modulation sources. Uh, kind of take it out a little bit more. It's kind of hard to find, hard to build a very focused voice for a certain style of music on a budget. And so having the, something like the ES8 or the ES9, which I think is still on pre-order or something like that. I've been seeing discussion of this. Uh, it extends the functionality of the modular a long way with CV tools and these other tools that even just with VCV rack, right? It enables us to communicate between software modular and hardware modular, if nothing else. It also allows us to bring this tool into an environment like Ableton and do extremely advanced interaction between these things, including with Max for Live devices, even delving all the way into Max. This is something I would love to do on stream. It's just difficult with only one computer. So, uh, working on that setup. But, there's many ways to make some really cool stuff out of that, including um, including visual content, right? Like even if we don't want to use the computer for anything audio related, if we're completely focused on audio in the hardware world, we can use something like the ES8 or the old Roland EFX modules. Those are some of my favorites. These these things, which have their own independent power, and the light's really weird on this camera right now. Have their own independent power and don't have to sit in the rack necessarily. These can act as really great uh, signal interfaces, right? They're basically just audio interfaces. So, um, and they can also do signal input and output, as Brian mentions there. They're also able to do audio in and out, so we can use them as normal audio interfaces. But yeah, very cool. Production Saw says would be great if someone actually made a video on how to send voltages in and out of Ableton to the modular, then going through examples. I actually have an old video on building a Max for Live device for simple DC offset. And so you could go check that out. End of Cycle says Loop Pop has a video about it. And I'm planning on doing a CV Tools um, live show. That would be a good subject for an upcoming live show, maybe next week. We'll see how all of those things interact. Um, yeah. Wayne Wayne mentions he has Ableton 9. Do I have to upgrade to Ableton 10 if I only want to record individual audio tracks from the ES9 or the ES8? No, I think you can do all of that with Ableton 9 as long as your ES8 or ES9 is showing up as your audio interface, which it should do. I think they're both class compliant audio interfaces, so I don't think there's a driver. Maybe there is though. You might have to install a driver from the Busy Circuits website, or not. I'm sorry, not Busy Circuits, Expert Sleepers website. But that's easy. That's you'd have to do that either way. So if they have a driver, if they're not class compliant, if they are class compliant, you can just hook it up and it shows up. I can't recall at the moment. Um, yeah. So yeah, in the next coming weeks, we'll look at CV tools because I'm going to be building that into my live setup. We'll maybe I might dedicate a couple of those coming weeks to actually doing my redoing the live setup, actually building the live orientation of modules and the rest of the setup because I think that'd be a fun point of discussion. And I have to do that because I need to be playing live. And yeah, okay, wait. Now there are some other questions. Okay. Oh yeah, Sana. Tell me if that's the right pronunciation. Sana Apotheca says Apotheca says sample and hold shenanigans with your new noise mic. That might be cool. So you guys may recall that a few weeks ago we built the electro sloosh electromagnetic microphone. I'm going to close that thing out. Okay. And we've been sending it through some reverb, stuff like that, but it's a really noisy, messy signal generator. Signal amplifier recorder. Okay, so let's take this thing. Here it is. Boom. Okay. All right. I guess this is a big thumbs up from everybody on the Ableton CV tools. And End of Cycle mentions he doesn't want to shell out the money for the upgrade from standard. And I'll give an unsponsored shout out for Ableton Suite because I think the jump from standard to suite is great, and the amount of stuff that you get with suite is ridiculous. Now, if you're only going to use it for audio recording, yeah, you probably don't need it. But if you want to get into more modular stuff and modular interactivity between your physical modular synthesizer and something like Max for Live, which is really unparalleled in any DAW in terms of functionality and the explosion of tools that are available to you. It's a great deal. Okay. Anyway, I got this thing hooked up. I have it plugged out into some reverb just to hear what it does. If we can get this thing to do its thing. Let's see. it is. Okay, so there we hear it. There it is, over by the... That's the electro sloosh pushed over there close to the surge protector. There it is next to the audio interface. Computer power supply. Okay, so that's kind of, you know, without reverb, it's just kind of like this dirty, hissy mess. So that's great stuff, and especially through some creative audio effects. That itself can be a great signal. But as Sana asked, this maybe could be a great sample and hold source, right? What's sample and hold? We have an old video about sample and hold. Basically, we send a signal into a sample and hold. It will, and then a clock as well. We trigger the sample and hold to sample the incoming signal, and at the moment of triggering, it will hold that signal as a DC current rather than whatever variable current it might be, and all of a sudden we'll get some stepped modulation source. So let's see, where can I find a sample and hold in my system right now? Okay, I think we're gonna go way over here to the Sputnik modular. Right, that is a sample and hold, right? Yes. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to take the Sputnik modular over here. This would also probably, this mic would probably be a lot more compelling going through the microphony. That would amplify the signal a little bit more, but it's pretty good level signal. We'll try it out without the microphony, and then if we need a higher level signal, then we'll do it. Production saw, this is the Electro Sloosh Mini City electromagnetic microphone. Electro Sloosh is spelled ELEKTRO, electro, Sloosh, SLUCH. They are, I believe, a Czech company, and from the Czech Republic, if I recall correctly. And yeah, it's a microphone for electromagnetic signals. So I think I'm going to actually just go ahead and plug this into the microphony, and then we'll go from the microphony over to the sample and hold. I don't think my camera is even going to reach over to the sample and hold, so you're going to have to take my word for it. Okay, and we'll come out of that over here to maybe the pitch input on an oscillator. The volt per octave input on an oscillator, even. Okay, and then I think we need to send a clock pulse to that. So we heard what that signal sounds like. It's a noisy, gritty signal that kind of, you know, the tone of it depends on what we hold, what electronic devices we hold it near, and what kind of electromagnetic waves are emanating from that device. So let's see. If we send a pulse in there, that means we need a clock out here. Let's try this one. And Okay, then we also need to route our oscillator. Let's take our oscillator out. I'll route it into that same reverb. Oh yeah. Did that wake you up? My apologies. Okay, let me catch up with you guys. Ornament and Crime any sample and Ornament and Crime do any sample and hold functionality. It definitely does. Let's see. That's an electromagnetic mic. Is there a link? I don't know that they'll allow us to post links in the YouTube chat. There's some funkiness about that. So, but if you look up Electro Solution, or even just electromagnetic microphone, you'll probably find it. Yeah, this particular one is sold out, but they have a bunch of other models. This is like the miniature one. So the other ones are probably a little bit more exciting in application anyway. M4, let me turn this pitch down. This is ridiculous. Man, oh man. There you are. Awesome. Glad to see you. We actually answered your question a little bit ago. I hope you caught that. But he asks, can we see the screen? There isn't a screen right now, really. I'm just doing a sample and hold of the signal coming out of this thing. Which seems like nothing right now. Okay. And now we can listen to that same signal, right? Let's mute that channel. So that's the kind of the sound of this microphone, right? That's going by like an LED light strip power supply. Super high frequency. This is by the data, Mordax data screen and the 4MS power supply. It's really quiet right now, but actually maybe a better way to do this would be to send it into the microphoning like I had it, and then route this out over here. There it goes. Now it's amplified. Okay, so that's what it sounds like. And we are routing that into a sample and hold, grabbing that signal as it's chaotically scrabbling around, right? And then sending that stepped result out currently to the braids. And now we can maybe slow down the clock. And depending on what we put it next to, let's put it over here next to this LED power supply again. Oh yeah, that pushes it all the way. Is this great or what? Hmm? Now I'm holding it up here by my my make noise case. It's funny because this sounds like a make noise case. Let's see, what else can we hold in here? Oh. Hold it close to the tip-top micro Zeus power supply. And keep in mind, we could, of course, quantize this signal. But that's no fun. Sure, if you want to sell records. I'm glad you recommended this, Sana. This is great. I feel like we talked about doing this when we built it, but I'm trying to scrape the microphone, but I guess it's overridden when I plug this in. Now it's working. And I wonder if we could mult this microphony signal and send it to control the clock speed as well. Let's try that. Let's get the clock from maths maybe, and we'll use the multed signal from the microphone. Okay, so production saw is asking what's the signal flow here, right? So I have the microphone. I know this is okay. Let me try to move the camera, but it's got a totally ridiculously tiny cable. So I have the microphone here plugged into the microphony right here. I'm taking that signal out, and that's what I'm sample and holding it. That's the signal that I'm sending to the sample and hold. The sample and hold is being clocked by a separate clock and the speed of that clock is kind of determining the rate of sampling and holding, and that's why we're hearing kind of the stepped results out of this thing. It's basically taking the signal that was coming out of this microphone, which is kind of this chaotic noise, picking up the electromagnetic waves, and freezing it every so often, and turning that signal into direct currents, which are then simply controlling the pitch of an oscillator. And so now we're going to try and mult that signal to also control the rate of the clock, which might be ridiculous and chaotic, but let's see. Okay, let's see if this even works. It might just stop the clock completely or something. Okay, so I'm just gonna like turn this down for a second. And we'll set this maths channel to, let's just maybe do something like that. Okay, so we can kind of hear the tempo there. So now as the noise gets more chaotic and the signal gets busier and higher in frequency, as we were hearing, especially with like the one power supply or the two power supplies over on this side where I'm playing with it, it's increasing the speed of the sample and hold as well. So we're getting kind of like this much faster. It's basically speeding up the rise and fall time of maths, which speeds up the end of cycle, which is that's what's actually doing the sample and hold trigger. It's kind of like a little bit of a weird theremin in this setup. As I get closer to the power supply, of course, this would also be cool if we use this to like control the envelope of the notes, right? The same clock. It's very sensitive. You know, if I get too close, or you know, it's maybe like 3 centimeters range. I don't know why I'm referring to metric system. Very, very subtle movements. And right now we're just hearing the FM mode from mutable braids. I didn't even dial it into a bell sound. It just dumb luck turned some knobs and it got there, and it sounds pretty damn cool actually. Oh, you know what might be interesting is plug in the Roland System M over here. This thing with its insane green lights. This might actually give us maybe not. Oh. End of cycle, that's a great question, and end of cycle is asking what it would sound like next to a Tesla coil. And I don't know if you're in LA, end of cycle, since you mentioned you played at Los Globos, but once things open up, it would be cool to take this up to Griffith Observatory, where they have a Tesla coil, and they crank it up every hour or so, and you know, just do plug it into a Zoom recorder or something like that, and just catch some audio from it. That'd be really cool, actually. Maybe in a future Voltage Control Lab video, once we're allowed to leave the house. I'm guessing that the power supply on this thing is behind the pitch envelope here. JVF mastering is not liking this. Trying to challenge your sensibilities, JVF. Everything is music. I guess the question is, do you like this better, or do you like this better? Because that's what it sounds like without... Oh yeah, there we go. That's the Roland. Boy, we should have had that thing going a long time ago. Wait, keep that in there. And plug this in over here. Sometimes we like the unsteadiness, JVF. I was saying earlier, you could quantize the output of this, right? Maybe we should do that. Let's do that for, let's keep this educational. Let's not just goof around here. Let's take a look at a way that we could easily scale this. Excuse the nauseating camera motion here. Let's see if this will focus. Hey, it did. All right. Okay. So we're going to change. I need to screw this back in. I did a live set or a live stream for Icon Collective the other day, and was showing the back of some of these modules, and I never went around to putting things back together. Okay, so let's take the output of this thing, which I think I'll have to mult just to reach it there, because I've got cables all over the dang place. So let's mult that. Let's take that signal, and we're going to send it into the input on this scale tool here. And I think we need to send our clock there as well, right? So we're going to have to mult the clock too. Do that. And just catching up with the chat right now. You could run the sample and hold output to a sequencer clock. We could certainly do that. Oh, sorry for the microphone noise there. Okay, and then where was that thing going? Oh yeah, okay. Just tracing my steps back here. So we're taking the sample and hold output, which a moment ago was unquantized, chaotic, maybe unmusical to our harmonically trained ears, right? So now what we've done is we've taken that signal that's kind of crazy and all over the place, and it's going to be still crazy and all over the place potentially, because we're using this crazy little electromagnetic noise microphone in the first place. It's going to be kind of random and noisy signal source, but that will now be mapped into this scale tool, which should fit it all into a chromatic scale, and then we can make it fit into a more musical scale if we want. But I think we need to trigger this thing, right? So we're going to need to take, that's right, we need to take that other clock. That malted clock signal. And we're going to bring that down in here and trigger. And maybe we'll take this out of FM mode for a moment. It's already more harmonically connected in a sense than it was. I mean, it may be still the 12-tone or chromatic scale, but now we can go through and turn off some of these steps. Let's just do a C major scale. Forget it. We're just gonna do it. Now, again, JVF, I'm going to temper your expectations here because making a melody with this would require us to maybe record some CV that's being essentially randomly generated. We're controlling some of that random CV using this scale tool, but it's still a randomly semi-random result because this microphone is just picking up unadulterated electromagnetic interference, which is just noisy and all over the place in terms of the CV signal. But now it's being sample and held, which means that as it goes high and low, we're occasionally grabbing onto that signal and holding it. That's why we're hearing nice held notes right now. Another maybe useful exercise would be to say, what if we just took this noise source, the microphone output, and routed it directly into the 1 volt per octave input on the synth? I mean, very cool. Right, now we're using this thing as a frequency control source. And it's just pure chaotic pitch change, right? So we're just randomly grabbing some of that signal. We're scaling that signal, right? We're grabbing that bit, that noise, we're scaling it down into a musical scale. What if we even limited this scale even more? Let's make it a pentatonic scale. One, two, three, four, five, right? I think you're exactly right, JVF. It's not that different than the Scion from Instruo, which can hook up to, biofeedback, pick up biofeedback waves. It's kind of chaotic, kind of out of control. Just making sure that my braids isn't quantized to some scale also. Yeah, no, it's not. So, again, we could maybe even limit this to just perfect fifths and octaves. That high note that we hear, that's like the major second in the scale, I think that is kind of the peak voltage, basically, on braids, maybe, or it's a peak voltage on one of these modules, and so we're reaching that note. It just happens to be 2 semitones higher than the octave. You could add in the third scale tone. Now it sounds like it's just 1 semitone higher. Okay. I think that's enough of that. Yeah, especially I think once we do a little bit more control of that, a little bit more attenuation of that signal. I mean, I don't know if you could tell that I was having fun, but I was loving that. I appreciate the mutual challenges to uh, our uh, our differing tastes, JVF. You know, like the idea here is that we're all challenging each other. So if it's obviously totally cool if pure unadulterated chaos is not your taste. You know, it's not necessarily mine, but sometimes I really love that, and um, I love the idea of being able to turn something like that into something controllable, and I think we were on the way there. Maybe if we were to employ the um, attenuating offset mode in Ornament and Crime on this other channel, this one, attenuate offset, which gives us a little bit of control. Maybe we could dial that all right back, so that we didn't have that weird extra, semitone or whatever, two semitones at the very peak. That might be useful, but um, yeah. So this was again, that was using the microphone was the Electro Sloosh Mini City, which was a kit that we built a few years ago, and that's out of stock and sold out. But Electro Sloosh, I'll type in the name here. They make other uh, electromagnetic microphones, if that's something you're interested in. And maybe that's not the lead. Maybe this is like some weird funky thing as a sound effect, or maybe that at the end of the day, maybe you're just like, no, that's not a tool for me, and that's fine too. We're just goofing with it. So, um, but yeah, it's cool to have this kind of like back and forth and be able to um, play with something and then have some totally valid question like, can we do something musical with that? You know, can we make this chaos musical in some way, shape, or form? And you know, hopefully we see that we can do that. It just takes a little bit of bending of those those forms. Let's see. Wait. End of cycle asked, "What oscillator is that?" We're listening to braids. Classic, lovable braids. Everybody loves braids. If you don't love braids, what are you even doing? Um, you could even take the sample and hold and just apply it to one step of the sequencer. That'd be interesting, right? Kind of bypass it or turn it on from time to time, and attenuate the signal so that we're modulating over the course of an octave, and then all of a sudden over 2 octaves or more. Um, all that jazz. So, um, Quantum Space, thanks for joining us. We're about to sign off, I think, here. We've been rambling and goofing around for a little bit of time, but hopefully that was some interesting stuff. And I think next week maybe we'll dive into some CV tools as I start to build up my more focused live set. We can talk about that. And I'm reloading the chat right now because it was all delayed. So yeah, I think we'll wrap it up there. This is Voltage Control Lab. VoltageControlLab.com, at Voltage Control Lab on Instagram, at VControl Lab on Twitter, and you can find my stuff at Computo on pretty much everything. So thanks so much for coming in here. Thanks so much for the great ideas, Sana, man oh man. Great questions to give us some things to jump off of. I can't remember who was getting the Pam's new workout. I think it was HR. Great little exploration there. And your questions are and subjects, discussion topics are always welcome. By all means, please send them to me. If you make a comment on a video or any of these things, I'll see it, hopefully. You can also send me DMs on Instagram or tweet at me or any of those things. So always happy to get into some of the Q&A stuff. And if I'm ever lacking for an idea, or I've just been too busy and don't have any other options, I'm going to try to do Q&As or some live patching and jamming, that type of thing. So, but sometimes weeks are like that. So, all right. Well, thanks you guys for coming in here. Really appreciate the hang, and hope you all have a lovely rest of